All right. Let's. Let's continue our discussion of functions and scripts. So last time, yes. So for quiz, there will be actually how much you get graded on the quiz, and then I think it's 5% of the grade. So it's actually, or it's bundled. Now I have to review the syllabus, but it's typically bundled with homework. So in that homework grade, there's also a portion of the quiz. Okay. So you do get, and it's a little bit, so there's not that many quizzes as there are homework. So it's sort of attendance. I don't take attendance every time, so it's a hit or miss. And there's also a number of you who have been telling me, oh, I can't make it to the certain date because I have an interview or something like that. Those are excused absences. So I will simply not take them into equation. So I will average all other quizzes of yours and not the one that you have something scheduled. But I have to know in advance. Fair enough? All right. Okay, so what we did last time is we typed in this function add multiply, and if you don't want to type it right now, you can download it from Canvas in files. There is a MATLAB. So there's a MATLAB folder, so you can download it. So this is the function, if you don't want to type it. So what are the input parameters for this function? So x and y, right here, are inputs, okay? And then function takes x and y, computes something. That something is s and p, and it gives it back. And it gives it back only if I actually type this. So these are output parameters that the function will pass back to my main workspace. Otherwise, it will remain in function. So we have that analogy, what happens in function stays in function unless you pass it to the workspace using output parameters. Okay? So in this case, we're simply taking sum and product of two numbers. Okay? So how do if I want sum and product of two numbers, give me a color.
Green.
Green. Okay, green shirt. Do we have anybody talk to? I think you're the first green shirt. Lucky you. All right, so what if I want to compute the sum and product of numbers 100 and 200? What am I going to do? So I have this function. It's called add multi. Okay? And I want to compute, it basically adds and multiplies two numbers. Okay? So I want to compute sum and product of two numbers, 100 and 200. How am I going to do that? What am I going to type into my workspace? Name. So I'm calling a function by name. That's why it has a name. This is the name. Okay? So add mult, and then my input parameters are 100, 200. Okay, so those are my x and y. Okay. And it said something answer 300, but I don't see s and p anywhere. Are they in my workspace somewhere? No? What do I need to do to actually get them out? Are they computed? I can actually uncomment this and save. Save. So I saved it, and if I now actually redo this, I can actually see them printed, S and P, because I uncommented, so it prints what it does. So I know that it computed S and P, but do I have them in the workspace? Can I say S? No. So what do I need to do to have S in the workspace? Now I will get S and P back. Otherwise, they stay in the function. And I don't have to call them S and P. I can call them something else. I don't know. S1 and P1. That's not very imaginative, but it's different. Okay.
What different did you do?
So I have to pass the output outside. And I do it this way. So that way, whatever was computed as S and P will be actually given back to the workspace. Otherwise, it stays in the function. And it computed it, but you don't know about it. So you have to give it back as an output parameter. This is giving it back as output parameter. Otherwise, it stays in the function. Again, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas unless it flies back somehow. So if you don't record it, it's not going to be given back in workspace. So now I actually have this. S1 is the sum and P1 is the product. Clear? Okay. So that's actually useful because sometimes I don't want everything the function computed in my workspace. This way the function sort of cleans up after itself. Okay. Question?
So only one function per M file, no matter what? Every function gets its own .m file?
No, so there was input parameters here, no files, I'm not sure.
It's not a .m file, but it's own .m space. Like, I can't put multiple functions on that same.
You could actually have another function here. Yeah, but typically it's the best to actually keep them separate because you can call from the workspace, you can call only the first function.
Oh, okay.
So I could have supporting functions here in the same file, but I wouldn't be able to use them outside of that scope. So this function could have another function it's calling that is down here. So I personally like keeping each one in its own file. Yeah. Nothing, it's just printing it out. So semicolon, it just suppresses output. So normally you don't want that output printed, but here I was just checking, did it do it? It did, right? I still couldn't grab the value. So part of me checking whether function works properly is not having this printed like this. So it's then gonna print everything it does. Okay? All right. So now, basically I could have all kinds of functions. So just main point is whatever function actually has as naming structure, it doesn't really matter. You can call it with whatever inputs, and it's going to interpret those inputs as X and Y and do stuff within it. And also outputs, you can call anything, it doesn't really matter, as long as you actually, when you call, you actually provide space for output parameters. Okay? So this is just another example. So remember to save the file after you modify it. So with new, you open a new file, and it could be a script or a function. After you're done typing, you save the file. And also it's good to have some comments which are after this % to actually give you an idea of what's the function doing. And one thing that is helpful about that is that if I actually have a comment here, so here I have this function and there is this comment. If I type in help, add mult, okay, it's gonna print what's here as a comment. And that basically reminds you what did you define as a function. So that's super cool, okay? So it's an interactive help right there. So again, help really prints everything here that is the first sort of batch of comments. And then it stops whenever it encounters actual commands. So again, for your own benefit, do comment. Okay, so there was a question, could I have multiple functions? Yes, you could. The first one is the primary function, and all others are sub-functions. You name the file based on that first primary function, and that's how you call that function. The others from that file you cannot call by name. But if you have function that is using multiple, it just makes logically sense to separate them into multiple functions. You can do that for readability, just so you can read. So that's part of your design. Okay? There's multiple ways to do the same thing. So you want to be able to write the code that 2 years later you know what the code does. Okay, so whatever that takes. So speaking of, let's design and do something. So these are the formulas that give area and perimeter of a regular n polygon, n being number of sides. So this is something you know from geometry. And here are some examples for n is 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. Okay? So basically, if you have double, so radius is this line here, S is length here, and n is actually number of sides. So if I have n as input, then I can compute S, A, and P using these formulas. I could possibly have S as an input, and then figure out n from here and compute the other two. So whatever two I have, I can compute the others. Does everybody agree?
What would be the radius of this triangle?
It's not a radius of a triangle, it's a radius of this area that the polygon covers. It's not the radius of a triangle. Now, for triangles, we can define the area. So for triangle, it's a circumscribed and inscribed. So there are two radii that every triangle or every polygon can have. One that I inscribe and one that I circumscribe. So this is radius of the circumscribed. And there are formulas for it. But there are formulas. Put in n is equal to 3 in there. Alright, let's write a function. Okay? Give me a function. Give it a name, your own name. Something that has something to do with perimeter and area. And let's say that this function has input n, number of polygon sides, and one of the other two. I'm going to pick either R or S as an input and compute the other two, area and perimeter. So let's say that n and R are input. That's going to be easier. If you want to make it a little harder, then let's make that function have input n and s. And I want area and perimeter computed by a function. By that I mean they have to be output of the function. So I'm going to start things for you, and I want you to work on it. So basically you will say new function. Output arguments are supposed to be what? Output arguments. What am I trying to compute? Area and perimeter. So let's say AP. Okay. Give it a name. Input arguments is a matter of your choice. One of them is n, and the other one is either R or S. Your choice. Give it a name. Compute stuff. And this is what you're supposed to compute. And you and I are here to help. Yes?
So this is what I do. Start
Okay. Just change it.
My question is, if I see one
So you can start writing in place of so then delete the old file, because you don't want to make it, just move it to trash.
I'm just.
Doesn't matter because it's scaled. So if you use Notepad, it's gonna work. Okay? But it'll work. And that way maybe you can give it a vector of numbers a vector of results back. So you have 3.5 and you compute for all of the cells. You don't have this.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
This you have to type. You never use function. Exactly, or define an X and Y.
Do you ever say like?
It's like saying.
Oh.
So. Yes. Right, so basically. And you don't. So computer. So answer is keeps hold the bucket. It's stored, but basically answer will give you the first output of the function. And every time you type something, answer is the storage for this answer. So
I'm just trying to figure out, I was like, I'm not sure what I'm like passing. Put 2 and 2.
Yes, so answer is the first output.
And he gave me 1.
So in order to actually
I put it
store it,
in
no,
14.
you have it actually separate.
Technically, you don't have to do that because then it's. Wait, you put 2 and 2. Yeah.
So bracket. Square bracket.
So I put it 4 and 2 and I got 11.3 and 6. Science.
Questions? So what happens? Who's my next green shirt? I have actually one green shirt up there. What happens when you have you done the function? So can you just tell me before we break? Can you tell me what happens when your n is 1?
Side, like.
Okay, so can you actually have proper areas and perimeters? No. So that's something that we would need to actually build in. Okay, so right now we don't have it built. Yes, it's not red, it's actually yellow, so you can still function. Yellow is well, it's minus 4, so 4186. Okay, it's 4186. So it's a 4486.
One of my peers, Alex,